Thank you for being here. Today is kind of a big overview of all kinds of topics that SIMBA can do a deep dive on you with your business. We can do all kinds of one-on-one support. Some of it might apply to your business, some of it won't. We'll try to tailor it here. Because there's not a lot of people, we can take questions at any time. I don't need people to wait, so that's a lot easier. This is our third Small Business Wellness Exam of the year and the final, gratefully. We did one in Colfax, one in Chewelah, and one here in Cheney. And we are happy to have our friends at Vexing Media recording so we can get it up on our YouTube. We do have some other presentations up there, so if you're looking for things, those are available at no cost. And our goal this year, my goal this year, is to record almost all of our presentations in some way. So if you miss something, you need help with something, you can always refer back to that. But I always do this and never introduce myself. My name is Robin. I'm the executive director at SIMBA. I've been in this role since December. And my real goal for the year, honestly, is just to tell a better story of who SIMBA is and what we can do. And get out more in the community, get more videos out there, let people know the services we have besides just Live Local. So I'm here with my colleague Alexis, who is going to handle all of the social media and communications portion of this wellness exam. Compliance is my background, so I get all the boring stuff. So I will try to make jokes. They will not be good, but you can laugh, or they'll put in a laugh track for the video for our future. Does this not want to work? It did work earlier? What am I pointing it at? Tom can edit this out, thank you.
This button.
This button, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
right and left, yeah.
Thank you. So SIMBA is the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We help businesses, entrepreneurs, and consumers in Spokane and all of Eastern Washington. That is part of why we go by SIMBA, because those 5 words are a mouthful. And just because we started in Spokane, we actually serve all the way to the Cascades, north to Canada, east to Idaho, and south to Oregon at this point. So SIMBA is also just easier. Unfortunately, some much larger corporation owns the rights to the name SIMBA and the domain name. So we're SpokaneIndependent.org if you're looking for us on the internet. So our mission is to create an environment for local businesses to thrive through organizing, education, and advocacy. Among other things, we do group trainings. We do one-on-one technical assistance meetings. Some of you have had some of those. At any stage of your business. So if you're a future business owner, you're a current business owner, you're ready to transition your business to somebody else, we can take care of those things. So everything from business plans to marketing, raising capital and applying for loans, and advising on hiring employees, retaining employees, all of those things. Why we're able to do this particular presentation for the third time is a grant through the Washington State Microenterprise Association. The WSMA, not BA, is a nonprofit foundation. It's partly state funded, partly privately funded, that supports what they describe as microenterprise. Microenterprise is 5 or less employees. It costs $50,000 or less to start your business. Most people start their business with $0. And generally businesses who don't have access to traditional credit or other conventional funding. And by that I mean, like, you can't go into a US bank and get a loan for your business. The standards are really high. We will talk about that in the future. So they provide grants for different things. They provided a grant for this particular program we've been doing for the last couple of months. So you might know SIMBA from Live Local. And there's stickers and goodies at the back of the table, so help yourselves as well. But if you are a business owner and you are not on Live Local, the big handout in the back has information on how to sign up for Live Local. It is free for any independently owned local business east of the Cascades to advertise their services, let people know your location, let people know your hours, list your products. Our goal for 2025 is to let it be a standalone e-commerce platform so that you're not selling things on Etsy where they're taking 30%. But that's a big It's a big goal. It's a big spend for our organization because it is free. The only thing we require besides being independent and local is that you subscribe to our newsletter. If you unsubscribe, you'll get a warning, and then we'll take you off. We do newsletter once a month at the end of the month, and then try to do targeted information as needed. But some local businesses you might know, Brick West, Evergreen Florist, KS Arcade, Indigenous Eats are all folks on Live Local. We have over 1,200 independently owned businesses on there. The reason I say independent is because there's a lot of locally owned, like McDonald's franchises and other spaces. They do not need help with advertising. They do not need help to tell you what their product is. So this is not the avenue for them. The other side of this handout has information on how you as a consumer can find local businesses. And we have everything on there. I always laugh. My favorite person I ever signed up for Live Local, they identify as a witchy life coach. But we have everything from witchy life coaches to restaurants, to candle makers, to accountants. So if you're looking for someone, that is where I recommend you look first. The other handout we have, especially if you are an independent local business owner and you can take several of these, is reasons why it's important to shop local. Sometimes it costs more to shop local. And as a business owner, want to be a business owner, it can get a little expensive. So encouraging people, keeping those dollars in the community. Statistically, if you shop local versus, say, Amazon, 70% of your dollar stays in your community. So that's just one of my favorite talking points, but there are several others. So that is always free. Take whatever handout you like. So we're going to go over a lot of things today. Some of you probably know all this stuff. Some of it will be a review. Some of it may not apply to your business. But please, raise your hand, holler out my name, whatever, to ask a question. We're happy to do that. But licensing and entity health, employee health, financial health, operations health, and marketing health. So how many of you currently own businesses right now? Okay. Do you have a business license? Yes, good. I talk about business licensing all the time with people, and everyone always looks at you make $12,000 or more in gross income and stops there. And it is an or, it is not an and. So it's not a dollar value, is your business address in Spokane, Spokane Valley, Cheney, Deer Park, Erie Heights, Medical Lake. Colfax, interestingly enough, does not require you to have a business license, but Pullman does. So folks in Colfax are in a unique little space where their business licenses are cheaper because they just need it for maybe using a trade name, but they don't have to have a city license. Or are you using anything literally other than your full legal name to run your business? Most people are. People who don't are often like accountants and CPAs and folks like that where they have to have a specific license anyway. If you're required to collect sales tax, and that is basically everything. Any kind of service you're providing to the public, any kind of goods you're providing to the public, if you're a personal trainer, you need to collect sales tax. If you're a performer, singer, you need to collect sales tax. So everything is a sales tax, or $12,000 or more. So if you fit any one of those, you have to have a business license. If you don't trust me on that, and I've been doing this for about 20 years, you can go to drr.wa.gov. We'll happily share these slides and email them out to you because these links are live if you're looking for them. But there's this business licensing wizard where you can put in the kind of business you're going to have, the areas of service you're going to have, and what your location is, all those kinds of things, and it will tell you that you're going to need a business license and what specific categories you need a license for, which is really nice. If you're thinking about it, you can also get a gauge of what it's going to cost. If you are within City of Spokane limits, for example, or your location is in City of Spokane limits or City of Spokane Valley, and you do not have employees, your license is about $180 a year currently. It's going to vary by the kind of business, number of employees. If you have minor employees, it gets even more expensive. So that's kind of about what the number is. It varies by where you are. You're going to apply for your business license at the Department of Revenue. You're also going to pay and file state business taxes there. Every business in Washington pays taxes to the state of Washington because we do not have an income tax In Idaho, they have an income tax, so they do not pay business taxes, except for within the city of Boise, if you're looking to expand out there. You must have a business license before you start doing business. What does doing business mean? That's a good question. Offering your goods or services to the public effectively, whether someone purchased it or not, is probably doing business. Is the Department of Revenue going to know that maybe you sold some candles to your family while you're testing things out? Probably not. But if you're out at farmers markets, if you have a Shopify website, if you're putting ads on Google, they will find out. The number of people last summer who got dinged by L&I and Department of Revenue was a little wild because they sent people out to farmers markets statewide and asked for business licenses and other kinds of things and asked for minor work permits. So just be aware. Again, if you're kind of doing it small and expanding, you don't need it yet, but before you really are doing it in a way that someone will find out, you do. Because there are fines and penalties for not having a license, and they can be pretty excessive, depending on the kind of business you have and the kind of volume of your sales. Generally, you have to pay for your business license annually every year. Some places not. Colfax, again, because you don't have a city requirement, you don't have to pay for your business license. I literally just learned this last week. There's like 5 cities in the state where you don't have to do it annually, and Colfax is one of them, so if you're looking to expand, that's an option for you. You want to save a few dollars. If you have a business that's out in public, like a storefront, like you're the cute little mason jar coffee shop that's some direction from here, you have to have your business license posted in a conspicuous place where people can see it, the current license. You also have to have 3 L&I posters, current ones, always up. If you have any kind of employees, we have 2 of them in the back, so if you don't have the current one, grab them. We don't have the 3rd one with us tonight. But you always have to have the current year's one up. If you do business at your home, if you do business at a farmer's market, you don't have to have your business license up. But if you're out in the wild and people get to come to your space, you do have to have your business license. Oops. There we go. Please, ask away. Can you use the mic?
If I have a business, but I live in an unincorporated area in the
Yes.
county,
Yes.
but I have an office in town, do I need a business license in the town that I'm operating in, or can I just have a business license for my home?
If you do you have customers coming to your space in town?
No.
No. Like you're just renting office space?
Yes.
So I'm asking granularly because that's kind of what it looks like. Probably not. But if you probably need a license anyway because you are maybe engaged in something that requires sales tax. So you don't need a license visible in your space, but you need a license generally.
My specific scenario is more of a service than
Okay.
Sales. So think like a CPA
Right.
does tax prep services. They can kind of do that wherever,
That's correct.
whether it's in their home or in their office or in a co-working space.
Right. So I would say though, do you have a business license at all?
With the state I do.
Okay, then yes, you're good. Thank you. I wasn't understanding your question, but now I understand what you're saying. Those of you who have businesses right now, what is the structure of your business? Are you LLCs? Corp LLC?
I'm a sole prop.
Sole prop, okay. So if you have an LLC, you know, or should know, you have to renew your structure with the Secretary of State every year, or any other formal business structure. So if you're an LLC or a corporation, a nonprofit, like us, you have to renew your LLC every year with the state of Washington, or you lose all the protections, which we'll talk about in a minute. For folks who have been down in Pullman, this is Frank. He's a SIMBA member. He's a Venezuelan immigrant who came to Pullman because his wife is like getting her PhD in something very technical. And he thought what was missing in Pullman was a local delivery service because Uber Eats and DoorDash are super expensive. So he started partnering with all the restaurants, and his rates are cheaper, his delivery times are faster, and he'll even bring, during the pandemic, was bringing like medicine to kids from pharmacies. So Frank is thriving.
Just to verify that I'm doing this correctly,
Please.
that's the annual report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And Because you weren't mic'd up, I'm going to ask your question again just for the video. Someone in the audience asked that what you need to renew with the Secretary of State is your annual report, and that's correct. If you're a sole proprietorship, you do not need to renew your entity structure other than your business license, and that's a separate place. Secretary of State is where you do your LLC, your corporation, your business structure, your business license at Department of Revenue. They're both Washington State entities. I do not know why they're in separate locations, but they are. And there's a couple of other entities we'll also talk about tonight. And unfortunately, there's no good guide of here's all the places you go for your business. You just kind of have to guess. And there's literally a small business association in Washington, a government entity, and even their guide is missing some places where you have to go in the state of Washington, and the state of Washington makes it. So I don't know why they can't get together and maybe just give you some links, but there it is. But let's talk about why you might not want to be a sole proprietor. Definitely the easiest business to set up, probably only the name of your business and a business license. Provides zero protections for your personal assets. So if something goes wrong, regardless of what your business is, they can come after your personal bank account, your car, your treasures. You should only have one business owner in a sole proprietorship. It's not the greatest structure for hiring employees if you don't also have a separate tax ID number, because then you're giving your social security number out to people. So if you are a sole proprietor, I do recommend you get a tax ID number, because otherwise when you give like 1099s to any contractors, you're giving your social out, and the less you can do that, the better. The beauty of a sole proprietorship is you file an individual and not a business tax return. Corporate tax returns are a hassle. They're very detailed. You're going to need an accountant for that. LLC, still pretty easy to set up. The extra step of the Secretary of State filing, which is honestly an easier filing than the business license. It does provide complete protection of your personal assets if appropriate financial management and bookkeeping is done, meaning you're not treating your business bank account as your personal bank account. The example I often give is like, it's okay if once in a while you buy yourself a coffee from your business bank account. Everyone does it. But if you're paying your personal rent and coffee every single day and your car payment that's not your car for work that your company owns, you probably don't have that personal asset protection anymore. You can have more than one business owner. You can have an unlimited number of business owners. You can actually have minors own your business in Washington. Children, not minors also who work, I guess, in the mines can own an LLC, but children. You do have to have an EIN, the tax ID. So EIN is just your business's social security number. The beauty of that is you're not giving out your personal information, and there's nothing that can be done with an EIN. You can't open up a credit card with an EIN. No one can use it. The bad part of an EIN, and I don't have it on here and I really should, is that if you lose your EIN, because you get a one-time letter from the IRS, if you don't have your records, you didn't write it down, you didn't save the document, it is really hard to track it down. There's not somewhere you can go look it up. You have to either call the IRS, which can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours, or you have to write the IRS a letter and wait for them to mail you a copy of your EIN, which can take 5 weeks, minimum. You still get to file an individual and not a business tax return, so it's pretty easy. But now, if you're an LLC, you have to complete annual, we call them the oh boy filings, beneficial ownership filings, which not a lot of people know about, unfortunately. So this is just screen grabs from our social media. We do put a lot of business tips out on our social media, so Spoken Independent, we just throw information out. But beneficial ownership filings are for all LLCs, corporations, formal partnerships, any formal structure formed before January 1. If your business existed before January 1, 2024, you have until January 1, 2025 to do it. If you start your LLC this year, your corporation, your formal partnership, you have 90 days to do it. If you do not do it in those time periods, you get fined up to $500 a day. This is a federal regulation. It's a new requirement. The law was actually, sole proprietors don't have to do it. The law was actually passed in 2020, the Corporation Transparency Act. the idea behind the act was that we're trying to look for like trafficking or people hiding assets, foreign entities who aren't allowed to bank in the United States, like laundering money. But because they don't know who that is, and people aren't volunteering that information, every formal structure has to do it. You file at FinCEN, which is a government agency. The filing is very simple. You will need your name, your address, and copies of the front and back of photo ID, current photo ID, for all owners of your business to do it. So have those things handy. We have a great handout if you need it. I see those of you with LLCs taking notes, so I will email it to you. It has a list of what you should have with you. It takes about 10 minutes. The other problem is there's no like notification email that you filed it, which is very frustrating. So take a screenshot. So I did a test run of this. It started January 1, and it's gonna go on indefinitely. So you'll have to do it every year, but it's really quick. It's less quick if you have multiple business owners because you've got to do it all at once.
Just happened this year.
Correct, yeah. So the question of the audience was, it just happened this year. The law passed in 2020. It just went into effect at the start of the year. So it's been unclear if they're actually going to collect those massive fines from people or not, because people maybe started an LLC January 1 and we're past 90 days. It's unclear what that looks like, but I will say it is a federal law, so like Washington State, whatever, but I'm not seeing the Secretary of State pushing information out about this either. So we've been trying to push information out about this. I had a really good laugh about it because someone said, why is SIMBA making me give this information out? Because he sent an email out at the beginning of the year. I'm like, SIMBA does not have that kind of power. And if I had that kind of power, I wouldn't be asking for your photo ID or working at a nonprofit. So, but it is required. It's very fast. Just, it's not, the website is not mobile friendly either. So I would do it on a laptop or a desktop if possible. Don't do it on your phone. So those of you who have businesses now, do you have employees? Off and on. So you've got a mix of yes and no in the crowd. Do you have an employee handbook? Okay. So since no one in the audience has one, you probably don't need to update it. The beauty of Washington is you do not have to have one. But if you do have one, there are things you have to have in there. So it's kind of either don't do it or do it and you have to have these things in there. So if you do have one, and if you want examples of one or help with those, that's something we can provide. But if you do have one, you have to include 5 federal and 10 state-specific labor laws and policies about things like how people get paid, when they get breaks, when they take sick leave. You can include things like conduct you expect for your staff, like I expect you to show up on time, I expect you to be ready to work, those kinds of things. You can include things like holidays, breaks, and vacations that are unique to your organization. So for example, we have, I think, 13 paid holidays at SIMBA, so we have those outlined in our handbook for our staff to know. Yes?
I have one page that's expectations. That's not considered an employee handbook, right?
So it's a gray area, maybe. So the question was, I have one page of expectations, but not the other stuff. That wasn't the question. That's how I've rephrased it. It was better phrased. The answer is maybe. Anytime you're creating a document or a policy for employees, it's potentially a handbook. Probably not. The only issue ever comes up if someone wants to fight you about it, a disgruntled employee. So that's a bit of a weird legal gray area that you might want to talk to a lawyer about, but maybe is the best answer I can give you. So the 5 federal laws, just quickly, equal employment, anti-discrimination laws, so everything you expect. For federal law, it's age, it is race, and age is 40 and over. Apparently you can discriminate if you're under 40. I know some of you in the room are under 40. It is gender and disability. That's it. State laws are much broader, especially in Washington. So Washington has all of those things for employee protections plus sexual orientation, gender identity, veteran status, pregnancy status. Jury duty leave, military leave. Some policies apply if you have enough employees, right? If you have 50 employees, FMLA applies federally. Only, it's 11 for state. But those are the required state ones. There's some good resources to just pull those off of. If you do have a handbook, that counts as a handbook. You should update it at least annually because laws in Washington change all the time. I know regardless of your politics, you always feel like congressional leaders in your state and federally are never doing anything, but they are always passing laws, just not the ones people talk about. And there's a lot of Washington labor laws that get changed all the time. So always try to update it. And every time you change it, your employee should sign it. So if you have one, and even if you just have policies, like a conduct policy, they should sign it at the start of their employment and anytime there's a change, and keep that in their file. If you have employees, though, there are certain records you have to keep, no matter what. So some of these records can be kept in a multiple set of formats. So for example, a lot of this record for us at SIMBA is kept on our time tracking system and in QuickBooks. You don't have to have everything all in one place. It doesn't have to be a single document with all this, but you need to have name, address, date of birth, their occupation, their start date. When their work week begins, sometimes that's in an employee handbook. So ours outlines that the start of our work week is Sunday. The reason that's important is because of overtime. You need to know when the week begins and ends for overtime purposes. Actual hours worked on a daily and weekly basis, you have to keep those records. The rates of pay, if there's different kinds of pay, vacation, holiday, overtime. I know some of you heard that I said Alexis has worked about 46 hours last week, so we're definitely tracking some OT. Total wages earned of all types, vacation, sick pay, tips and service charges. I will say it over and over again. If you have a business that tips, the business does not own the tips, the employees own the tips in the state of Washington. You can pool them and give them out to other people. So like, for example, you go into a restaurant and they tell you that we're giving a portion of this to the kitchen staff, etc. The house does not get to take a cut of that. I know it happens all the time. So tips and services need to go to employees. You need to keep paid sick leave records, and then any addition or deductions from wages. So the things you expect on your paycheck, your federal taxes, your Social Security, if you had a garnishment, those things, you need to have records of those as an employer. If you have employees under 18, there are a ton of extra records, including authorizations from their school, authorizations from their parents, if they're emancipated, authorizations from the court, and a bunch of other things that we will not get into. If you're looking to hire minors, reach out to us or someone about that before you do it. If an employee wants to look at their payroll records at any time, you have to give it to them within 10 business days or a, quote, reasonable period of time. So if you're the only owner of the business and you're out of the country for 3 weeks, 3 weeks is probably reasonable, but 10 business days is kind of the standard. You don't have to print them out for them, you just have to give them access to them in some way. And that's payroll records, not personnel files. You need to keep all employee records for 3 years, including prior employees. So honestly, the best way to consider that is to keep all payroll records from 3 years from their last date they worked for you. Other things federal law requires, you need to keep some additional things. Worker qualifications, so that might be a resume, so people who apply for jobs keep their resume. Any verification of training, if you did like a sexual harassment training or a training on a piece of equipment or fill in the blank required training, keep that record. Their job description, so from your job posting. As someone who's currently hiring, there's nothing I hate more than making a job description because it just feels like a bunch of words that don't tell you what the job is and what I want you to do. And that will fit some kind of algorithm, I think. Any supervisor's files, which would be like disciplinary things, performance evaluations, and any records given outside of the organization. So that would come up if you are doing things like, if you have a workers' compensation issue, you have an employee injured on the job and you have to give information to a doctor or a third party, you're gonna keep those records. You need to keep for at least a year the Form W-4, which is where your employees are indicating what kind of deductions they would have for payroll. If you have a handbook, keep a copy of their signature on the handbook and any training acknowledgments. Keep for at least a year any termination or resignation letters. In Washington, a wrongful termination suit can happen anytime from 3 years after the employee has left employment, so keep it for 3 years. I know the law is only 1 year, but were you to get sued and you're fighting about someone resigning versus getting fired, having the letter would be helpful. And then emergency contact information. I-9s. I-9 is the document where you verify that someone is legally able to work in this country, and that is not even an immigration thing. They have to have a current driver's license. They could just not have a current license or ID. They can have an ID or license. Don't keep those in their personnel file, but do keep them. The federal government can request to inspect these at any time for any employee 3 years after their hire date or 1 year after termination. Generally, the best practice is just keep all your I-9 records together for everyone. And then don't keep medical records in a personnel file. You really want to restrict those. You may not ever have medical records for your employees, but if you have someone who has a disability and they have an accommodation, for example, and there's a record of that because they've asked for that, keep that separate from their files. Doctor's notes, if you have a policy about how many days you can miss without a doctor's note, keep the doctor's note. And related materials, they do need to be kept, but just don't keep them in the personnel file. Personnel files are really about the hours you worked, your performance evaluations, and kind of your backup information. And really, ideally, it's just to keep that stuff as confidential as possible. Payroll and reporting. There's so many things here that are really important. Employee pay stubs, or pay advices is the other term for pay stub. They need to include an itemized statement showing the pay basis, so the hours or days worked, or the rate of salary, their gross wages, and all information regarding paid sick leave and deductions. It's much easier if you have some kind of payroll system than doing it yourself. I know most people do that now, and it takes care of it for you automatically, which is lovely. But if you are an employer who has an employee versus a contractor who you're just doing things by hand, you have to give them some written something, and written can be electronic. I don't know why I'm pointing to this laptop here, showing what their base pay was and then whatever deductions there were from there. If you have agricultural workers, no one in here does. There's a ton of extra requirements. If you're working in agriculture, you need an attorney to handle the payroll processing. There's more if you want to hire employees, and this is where employees get really expensive. All employers in the state of Washington must file quarterly tax and wage reports every single quarter. There are penalties for not filing, and they're steep. So there's multiple reports. The first one is the Washington State Tax and Wage Report. This goes to the Employment Security Department, another entity. This is where you're reporting on gross wages, information for unemployment, so people can track their records if they ever had to claim unemployment. You still have to file a report of no wages if you had no employees, if you've ever had employees. The second one is workers' comp. They just want gross wages for everyone who's there so they can make sure that everyone is tracked. Workers' comp often is required for independent contractors in Washington. There's some rules around that, and when I say contractors, I do not mean construction workers, although they are always covered by workers' comp. I mean anyone who works for you who's not an employee, who is getting paid on a 1099. Someone doing a specific project, someone working for a limited amount of time, someone who has unique skills. Sometimes workers' comp is required. If you have questions about that, that's a really long discussion, but we can provide resources about that. You need to file quarterly reports, again, of all hours worked and employees. We do all of ours on QuickBooks, so I can't pull most of the reports, but this is what your workers' comp report would look at with some things redacted here. But it's just, here's our first quarter. It's due by the end of the month after the quarter ends, and whatever our gross payroll was, our rate. The rate for your employees for workers' comp is based on the kind of work they do. So we're all office workers, so we're pretty low risk. If there's ever been any claims on workers' comp for your organization, and the years your business has existed. So it goes down with no claims, regardless of how risky your business is. It can go up with claims, just like any other kind of insurance. And sometimes they recategorize people as well. So if you have questions about how to categorize an employee, we can provide some help with that, although it's pretty detailed. We just met with some florists the other week in Colville, and they were saying that their risk calculation is really high and they pay a lot, and I couldn't figure out why. And then they talked about all these knives that they use to cut the flowers and all these pruning tools, and that vases often get broken and there's broken glass. I'm like, okay, now I know why you have a really high risk calculation. My brain was just thinking of pretty flowers and you're taking them from here to there and nothing else happens other than adding water, but I was wrong. The third state report is paid family and medical leave. Washington has paid family and medical leave. This one is a mystery, honestly. You can estimate the amounts you're gonna have to pay for your employees and the parts that come out of their paycheck, but it will not give you a calculation. Like, you will put in data of like, I have this many employees, this is the hours they work, but there's no calculation. And you also cannot pull a calculation of what the number they say you owe is. So right now they think we underpaid by a penny in December. I have tried to pay the penny, you cannot pay a penny. And then this month they said, well, now you've overpaid by 43 cents. So they did not take the penny and apply it in any other way. So we've got a floating penny owed, 43 cents claimed. I don't know what's going on in that department, but that is, it's a division of employee security. The other things like L&I has a calculation, you can see the calculation. Unemployment has a calculation, you can see the calculation. This one is just unclear to me. Federal reports. So here's one I tell people, your accountant wouldn't tell you this. I asked our accountant today if she would tell people this because I met with her and she said she would. So sometimes money is tight as a small business owner and you're thinking, I've got to pay and file all these things. Having an employee is usually 25 to 30% more just for payroll taxes and things that we've just gone through than their hourly rate. And if you're offering any kind of benefits, that gets even higher. So when you're setting their wages and thinking about what it costs to actually have an employee, add about 20% easily. And if you want benefits of any variety, like we have healthcare and vision and dental, that adds up. But the one that you should never miss filing and paying is federal payroll tax. And here is why. Because regardless of how well you keep your books, if you're an LLC and you've kept everything clean, if you're a nonprofit and no one owns your business and you don't file federal payroll taxes and pay them, they can garnish your personal bank accounts. It is in the IRS code. So do not mess with the IRS. So if you're juggling which one to pay this one and file this one. And they have to be filed electronically. So if you're not using a payroll system, you have to go to literally 2 different IRS websites, one to submit the report and one to submit the payment. If you're using something like a QuickBooks, Xero, any fill-in-the-blank accounting software, it usually does it for you. That often justifies the cost of it, quite frankly. But you pay federal unemployment taxes, a portion of Social Security, a portion of Medicare, and that's where the employer payroll tax comes through. Those numbers do add up. They are paid quarterly. Some very large businesses pay them monthly. If you have a very large business where you're paying them monthly, you don't need to come see a nonprofit on a Tuesday. So not going to apply. When you're there ready, you're going to have an accounting staff and lawyers on retainer at all times. But always pay that one because they can literally go after your personal bank accounts to take that money, and then you just sort it out amongst yourselves, among your business owners. Yes?
I use QuickBooks
Yes.
and do all my payroll through that. My taxes, I believe, are being paid automatically through that. I don't know if it's reporting.
So the question was, the employer uses QuickBooks for all of their payroll taxes and their payroll and everything else. The answer is if you're using QuickBooks Online or any recent version of QuickBooks, it is also filing all of your reports for you. And you can go into QuickBooks. I can show you where and pull those reports if you ever had a question about it. And that truly almost justifies the cost of it. I worked with a business down, I won't name the location because it's a tiny town, but they had a restaurant and they had an old school bookkeeper who was a friend of the family who was doing everything right, but didn't realize you had to file your payroll tax reports electronically, so she just wasn't. So she was paying all the taxes, and the money was getting by check, and the IRS was definitely cashing the check, because they will always cash your check. But they were not associating it with anything, so they started getting notices and garnishments about not having paid this because they didn't have the report. So after we fixed all that, the next thing we did was get them on QuickBooks Online because it costs a little bit more, but the IRS never calls you, which is preferable. So again, potentially your personal assets are at risk here, even if you're doing everything right, so pay your payroll taxes. This slide is really tiny, and I apologize. And the last 2 times we did it, I was further away from the slide, so I couldn't even see, and I had written it on my hand because I always forget the number. But if you pay people in salary in Washington, federally the rate is lower. But if you have a salaried employee, you still have to track their hours. Right now, if you have 1 to 50 employees, which would be kind of everyone here, if their salary is less than $67,724.80, which is a very specific number, it works out to like 2.5 times what the current minimum wage is. If they make less than that, they are entitled to overtime even if they are salary. So you need to track their hours and pay them overtime regardless of the kind of work they're doing. There are a couple of very unique exceptions. Some of them apply to teachers, which is really sad. But generally, if you're in any kind of retail, public-facing business, salary is great because it's easy. Payroll is consistent all the time. But you need to track those hours for reporting, and you need to pay people overtime. And the penalties for not paying employees correctly, whether you're missing paying overtime or you are underpaying them generally or paying them late. If someone were to make a claim, you owe them 2 times the back wages plus penalties. So if you are paying people salary, have some mechanism to track their hours. I literally met with the assistant director of another nonprofit this week, and I don't know how this came up specifically. We were talking about something completely different, and I mentioned this, and he said, "What are you talking about? I make a number less than that." And he worked 80 hours last week, and he has not been making overtime. And I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you or how to address your board, but here's a handout, and best of luck. So those numbers keep growing every year, and they're going to max out. 2028, the salary cap for small businesses is $92,560. So if you're making less than $92,560 in 2028, which feels like forever from now, but is really not that far away, people are going to get overtime. So ideally, everyone will get potentially overtime in the state of Washington. The federal law is supposed to be changing, but the threshold right now is $37,500, approximately right there. I believe it's going to get put up to $45,000. So the federal law is a lot lower, but you always have to adhere to the state law. If you're in Idaho and paying salary, you can avoid a lot of that if you're above the $37,000 or above 37,500. Let's talk about your financial health. For those of you in business, have you completed an annual budget? No. I mean, I could lie. We're on video. Everyone's saying yes. If you did, what would you put in it? It's not a test. What you would put in there is your revenue. All of your sales, any interest, which is really rare. There's some other kinds of business income that comes through. Like if you had a contract, you provided services to someone and they're paying on a contract for a period of time for a larger purchase, that might be kind of other business income. Our board president is a filmmaker, so he sometimes gets royalty checks for things, and sometimes they're tiny, so he'll show us the check sometimes. It's like 15 cents because somebody watched the documentary once on Netflix in the last year that he did 20 years ago. So there's some other income, but for most people it's your sales, right? Sales of goods, sales of services, sales of art, performance, whatever it is, possibly interest. All of your expenses. So fixed expenses or generally fixed expenses, rent, insurance, utilities, bank fees. By fixed bank fees, I mean things like the amount you pay to have your account. So like if you're banking at a Chase or an Umpqua or a traditional bank, they often have minimum fees for your bank account no matter what. Credit unions often do not, and I cannot recommend credit unions enough if you are a small business owner because they also can lend a lot easier. Any software licenses, any equipment leases, payroll and payroll liabilities, if you have consistent staffing, those are generally going to be fixed. variable cost of goods, especially in food right now. If you're running a restaurant, your margins are very thin. Bank charges that are inconsistent, so credit card processing fees. If you're selling on a platform like an Etsy or an eBay, those fees you can are going to be variable. Travel you have to do for your business, not travel just because we want to travel. Advertising varies. And one-off costs, like a piece of equipment you have to have, office furniture. We just moved into a physical office space in November and had to get some furniture, so that was a one-off for us. Everyone was kind of working remotely. If you're using software like a QuickBooks or Xero, there's a bunch of others. They all do essentially the same thing. And I will say, choose the one that you like, and just make sure before you choose it that you can download your data in case you want to switch in the future. Almost all of them will do that for you. But find one you like. They all integrate with everything, so I'm not here to shill for one or the other. We're on QuickBooks at SIMBA only because we've had it since before I was here, and I have no desire to have to download data and change systems, so we're good with that one. But all those software can look at your past revenue if you have been running for a while and create a proposed budget for you that you can move the numbers around, and it's really lovely. And then you can do kind of a budget to actual.
All that stuff's pretty much on the P&L.
Correct. So all that stuff is on the P&L, but P&L is going to give you P&L profit and loss. I said it once and someone didn't know what I was talking about, and I maybe also mumbled. All that is going to be on your profit and loss, but sometimes, for example, if you're applying for a loan, they want a budget. So your P&L is not going to cut it. It also, there's other reports you can run, a cash flow report, other things to see where you are. So they all are going to live there, and if you're running on a QuickBooks, Xero, fill-in-the-blank software, it can create all those reports for you, which also helps pay for those systems because hiring an accountant can be very expensive. But this is a really simple annual budget, because another way to do an annual budget or even a quarterly budget is a spreadsheet. I know no one loves a spreadsheet. I kind of love a spreadsheet. There's, this is where I'm going to show my age. There's a TikTok account I follow, and I'm definitely too old for TikTok demographics, and Alexis will talk about that. His name is Excel with Grant, and he gives you tips and tricks on how to use Excel spreadsheets and all the formulas and things. And I love it because I love a spreadsheet because it helps me project revenue and grants and all the other things we are tracking. But you can have it very simple. You know, your sales income, this is just an example here, rental income, referral fees, interest, kind of whatever income they have here. I honestly don't know what this business is, where they have rentals and hedging, so maybe they're doing property management, potentially, and they own some of the properties. And then their basic expenses, their actual expenses, what they thought they were gonna get, and then what the difference is, allows you to budget. And so you often need these for lending, so think about having something. And budgets can be very, very super detailed. We have every different grant we have and every different contract we have lined item out and everything tracked to that. That's necessary for a nonprofit, probably not necessary for you to break out every kind of sales income. Like, I know that you have note cards of different, and stationery and other things. You wouldn't have to break it out to like, here are note cards and here are notepads and here are stickers. It could just be general sales. But if you really wanted to get granular, you could. There's a retail store in Spokane that sells baby clothes, and their budget is wild. I looked at it the other day. I mean, it's very detailed. She likes a spreadsheet more than I do. It has literally, like, we have 15 tan onesies and 25 white ones, and wildly detailed. And she doesn't just have that for purposes of inventory. She just wants to know exactly what's selling and what's not. Not necessary. Just start somewhere. If you are a business in Washington, you must file your state B&O, business and occupation tax, and sales tax reports, usually quarterly. Some businesses are monthly. You will find out when you get your business license, they will tell you. Failure to file results in penalties, and here's the fun penalty. If you've been in business for a while and you fail to file for a quarter, they take your best quarter ever of your business, and that is your penalty for your taxes. Even if you had a really bad month or quarter and you didn't work at all, that is the one, and then you have to disprove it. So file. And they're pretty generous with extensions, honestly. I worked with someone who just started their business and they wanted to walk through the B&O filing, and so they got an extension and they gave them 60 days to do it. So not a huge deal. The B&O state tax is 0.471% of your quarterly income. It's pretty low. There's sometimes additional city taxes depending on where your storefront is. And if you have multiple physical storefronts, you might be paying more. You file those Department of Revenue, same place you got your business license. I will say the quarterly tax, the first time there's a little bit of setup, but then it's really easy because it creates kind of a template from what you used last time. So if the way you do business hasn't changed, you're selling in the same places, you're getting the same kinds of, there's very few state deductions, but you're getting some of the state deductions, it's pretty easy. The first one might take you a little bit of time. But they are at the Department of Revenue. You can amend them and get money back. Yes?
Sorry, I'm the one with all the questions.
No, please.
So, is the QuickBooks portion of this pretty accurate, and can I trust it? I haven't trusted it, so I am paying an accountant to file, and I'm monthly.
Okay.
So I'm paying him $100 every month to
Sure.
file B&O.
So I don't know the answer. So the question was, is QuickBooks good with calculating your B&O taxes and your sales tax? QuickBooks is excellent at calculating your sales tax. QuickBooks is not always quite there with B&O, particularly depending on how you're tracking your revenue on QuickBooks, because you can be a cash basis or accrual basis. These are accounting terms that I don't need to come in, but one is you earn the revenue when you make the sale versus when you get the money, right? Most businesses are cash basis because it's easier. They're a little off. I would say it's not the hardest filing, and if you want to like go over it, we can go over it in the future. SIMBA does provide one-on-one and other small group meetings at no cost to help you work through these things. We always do ours manually, so nonprofits even pay business and operation tax for anything we sell. We don't sell a lot, but sometimes we sell t-shirts at markets, or we sell memberships, or occasionally fill in the blank something. So we actually pay B&O taxes as well. So we have to always file them. The number's a little...
If it's pretty simple, I can do it myself.
It is pretty simple.
Save $100, but if it's going to take me an hour out of my other stuff I've got to do, I'd rather pay somebody else
Right.
to do it.
So yeah, so the question was, is it essentially worth my time to do it? Is it pretty simple? If it's already been done multiple times, the template's going to be there. It's going to be pretty simple. And if you're using software where you can just download the gross numbers, it'll be very fast. And that is always the question, right? Do I hire someone to do this, or do I do it myself? Sometimes when you're brand new, you don't have a choice. Once you have that luxury of, I'm really good at this thing over here and it's not B&O taxes, maybe it's worth your money to pay it. It wouldn't be awful to take a look at it and see if it's something that you wanted to do. Retail sales. Retail sales in Spokane County varies from 8.1 to 9.2%. It's a 9.2 in Liberty Lake, which is wild. At the last event, someone made a joke about the Real Housewives of Liberty Lake driving up the cost. So maybe that is true. Stevens County is 8, Whitman's 7.9. I didn't fill in that blank. Lincoln County is 8%. Depending on where you are, if you are selling in multiple places, so here's a question. If you are doing e-commerce, you don't have to figure out everywhere you're selling stuff, right? And if you're using something like a Shopify or another platform, it's going to calculate whatever the tax rate is for you. You don't need to worry about it. But if you have a storefront in Stevens County and a storefront in Whitman County, you are going to have to do taxes differently, 7.9 and 8%. So, and that's physical storefronts, and that's something to think about. And back on the business license that I didn't mention, so we had a good question from the audience about if I have a location where I'm not really doing business, do I need a business license there? Not necessarily. If you're someone who's working at markets, we have a lot of people who are small vendors. They're working at farmers markets, they're going to vendor fairs, they're doing X, Y, and Z events. Do you need a business license everywhere you go? Probably not. If you're doing a one-off over in Lincoln County, no. If every weekend for 3 months, you're in Lincoln County, yes. So kind of depends on what you're doing. If you have a storefront in Spokane Valley and a storefront in Deer Park, you need 2 business licenses. You're collecting sales tax whether you're putting it in the price or not. If you're a smaller vendor and you have your goods in someone else's location, they may be collecting sales tax for you, so you're less concerned about this. If you think your business doesn't require sales tax, it probably does if you're selling to consumers in any way. And often it's just baked into the price, right? You go somewhere, it's $15, price is included in tax, the business owner is paying that tax. When you collect that amount, you're effectively holding it in trust for the state and it gets paid with your tax filings. That is all on the same filing as your B&O quarterly or monthly filing. And that calculation is very accurate on QuickBooks Zero. Just the B&O, because the rates change and it doesn't always pick up the right income lines. I feel safer doing it on Department of Revenue and using their calculation, but I also told you that I follow someone who does spreadsheets on TikTok, so I'm maybe not the best example. So we talked about a lot about bookkeeping. Have some system. It doesn't have to be QuickBooks, Xero, Zoho, Sage, FreshBooks, Quicken. All of those have about the same level of positive reviews. They all do the same thing. They'll do it in a way that you like or you don't like. Test them out. They all have free trials if you're looking for a new one or starting out. But have something. Do not rely on your bank account balance being high enough to pay your payroll. And that's your bookkeeping. And I don't say that as a joke. Last summer was kind of the end of the COVID funding, and businesses were able to get a bunch of grants. Like if you were in City of Spokane limits, for example, they had a bunch of grants they gave out. And you had to show your expenses. And the number of businesses who could not show their expenses because they never tracked anything, businesses who have been in business for years, was kind of wild. So we spent a lot of time creating spreadsheets and pulling expenses so they could even apply for this basically free money. But have some kind of system so you know. So you know also as a business owner how you can pay yourself, which is truly the most important part. But it doesn't need to be anything specific and a little more than your bank account. In addition to basic bookkeeping, you should be planning for federal taxes. As a sole proprietor, as an LLC, as a corporation, it's a little different. Making sure you have a system that's tracking your deductions. And if you're using software, sometimes having an accountant take a peek at it to make sure you're maximizing your deductions at least once is worthwhile. There are a lot of accountants and bookkeepers in town, and in town I mean Spokane County and surrounding areas, who will happily take a peek at your QuickBooks, say, hey, you're missing this thing, so you can start tracking that. And usually that's a one-time cost if you're interested in doing that. Are you really making it worthwhile? If you are fully self-employed, you have no other source of income, you do need to file quarterly federal tax filings as a business owner towards your income. You can choose not to. They're not going to take you to jail. Nothing bad is going to happen to you, but you will pay a penalty at the end of your filing year for not paying taxes in advance. Because you have to pay in advance, even if you pay fully by April 15th or whatever year or day of the year they make the tax filing day, because it's always on a business day. But if you have more than one job, your business is your side gig, you don't have to file quarterly federal taxes. Some common business deductions, and these can be very specific to what you do, but these are ones that apply to a lot of businesses. Advertising and marketing, your rent and lease, not your personal rent and lease, your business rent and lease, insurance premiums for your business, accountants and lawyers, if you hire them at all, it's a business write-off. Any software you use, all the ones we talked about today, or things like Adobe, or any kind of time tracking software, all of that is a tax write-off. Office supplies, paper, pens, stickers. The cost of goods is a write-off. So if you're making clothing and you purchase fabric, the cost of that fabric to produce your final product is something you can write off. Repairs and maintenance related to your business, and that could be business equipment or your physical building. Any payments made to contractors, which could be, again, people who work in construction or people you hire who are not employees. bank charges and fees, and your business license and your state taxes paid. Those are all things you can deduct from your federal taxes. And I always tell, especially with the state taxes paid, because you pay those B&O taxes either monthly or quarterly, that at least if you're paying it to the state of Washington, especially if you're somewhere that has a city license like Spokane Valley, Deer Park, City of Spokane, Cheney, 70% of those state taxes actually stay in that city, which is pretty exciting. So the money at least stays in your community. I do not know what the money is used for, but at least it stays where you are and not siphoned off somewhere else. If you are tracking mileage from your business, which you should, related to your business, it must be business-related mileage. So not your trip to go to a WSU football game, unless that was your business somehow. And not your commute between your residence and your usual place of work. But if you go anywhere else and you track that mileage and have some system to track it, you can deduct it. There are two different ways to track it. One is actual mileage. Like today I drove from SIMBA's office to Cheney. That is my actual mileage. And if I forget, I can pull up in MapQuest, Google Maps, woo! I can pull out a paper map and do a highlight. And find out how far away it was and keep that record. The other alternative is to know your odometer reading from the vehicle you're using for work from the start of the year to the end of the year, and giving your best guess estimate of the percentage of driving that was for work versus personal use and not counting your commute. So it's usually easier to track things that are just not your commute. Keep those records for 7 years because the IRS can audit you in 7 years. And it doesn't have to be anything formal. Like literally you can have your printouts from Google Maps of like, here's from SIMBA's office downtown to the Cheney Library, and this is the day we went, and I just kept a stack of it. You can keep it electronically. But you have to track it somehow. Finally, before Alexis gets to talk and I can stop talking at you, grants and loans, your business financial health, how you grow your business. Grants are incredibly rare for for-profit businesses. During COVID, and because we're kind of out of the COVID funding era, there were a ton of grants available, and then loans dischargeable and all kinds of things. And I think a lot of businesses who started then really thought they're always available. They are not. I wouldn't count it on a grant as a source of income for your business. Grants are very specific to a project. They require a lot of reporting. Alexis got to watch grant reporting for one of our grants for the first time on Monday, and the 4 to 5 hours I spend just reporting on that one grant every month is excessive. And if they are for a for-profit business, they're usually research-based. So we will give money to a for-profit business to do research on health outcomes for girls leaving the juvenile justice system if they play sports. Like that's literally a grant that's available right now. Most businesses are not going to be able to do that grant. They do happen every once in a while, and I will say we do put out grant information that we know about that might apply to local businesses in our newsletter. So if you're reading anything, go to the grant section and see if something helps. We can provide grant application assistance. We cannot do it for you, but we can help you make it better after you've worked on it. So definitely always look at that. There are great tabs at the top if you don't want to read the whole thing to go right to the grant part. But again, they're very specific. They're also very time limited. And there are just very few for-profit businesses. But where you're going to get money as a business owner is from loans, other than sales. So some things you need to know. It's usually tied to your business and your personal income for a small business. And most business owners will tell you that they have used their personal income to pay for their business forever, because it's very hard to get a small business loan of any variety. Your personal credit score is a factor on whether someone gives your business a loan, even if your business has been around for a while. You're going to need a business plan with real numbers for most lenders. A business plan we'll talk about in a minute, but is a very formal structured document. We actually just bought some business planning software. So if you need to work on a business plan, we can give you access to it for 30 days where you can work with us on that plan in real time. So if you're working on it at night, we don't work at night. But if you're working on it 10 o'clock at night, you're a night owl, and you send questions, we can send feedback. And it's software that is accepted by all the banks in our local community. So if you need that to apply for loans, we can help you with that. But a business plan is a real thing. It has to have real numbers. We had someone work on a business plan for a restaurant, and they had numbers, and I'm like, these chairs seem really cheap. Like, where did you find these? Oh, we just made it up. I'm like, oh, no. Because the bank wants something. And the bank is okay if you go on a website and say, I need 25 chairs and print it out and say, this is what I think they're going to cost. That's perfect. But just don't put a fake number in there. The other thing you need when you're applying for a business loan specifically is you need experience in the business you're seeking funding from if it's a startup. So restaurants are one of the hardest things to get money for. Don't start a restaurant unless you have a bunch of capital, truly. But if you're starting a restaurant and you have no restaurant experience, and that can mean like you were a barista or you worked in a kitchen or fill in the blank, that's great. But if you have no restaurant experience, you're just a good cook and have some cash, you're probably not going to get a commercial loan. And even if you get a business loan, you are probably personally on the hook as a personal guarantor for the loan. So if your business doesn't pay and your business goes bankrupt, you have to pay for it. You also always need a current business license, so another reason to get a business license. And in Washington, you're going to need a current Washington state or federal ID to get a business loan. Other states, you're going to need their state ID or federal ID to get that loan. Business plan is a written document that includes a lot of things. Executive summary is just like your intro, like here's who I am, here's why I think you should give me a loan. Company description is who you are, what you do, how long you've been in business. What are your products and services? What is your marketing plan? It can be aspirational, it can be actual. We advertise on Craigslist and Google and Facebook ads, or we do direct mailing, fill in the blank. Your operational plan is how you run your business. Management and organization for a solely owned business is I'm the manager and the employee and the accountant and the janitor and fill in the blank. But if you've got more people, give them a structure. You have to have a personal financial statement in there because, again, business lending is always tied to the owners. And if you have more than one owner, it's personal financial statements for every owner of the business. Financial history and analysis of the business. This is why you probably want software to do this. I priced out business plan consultants recently, and in Spokane, they're charging between $400 and $5,000 for a basic business plan, which is wild, and they can be $30,000. So there are easier ways to go around it. Your financial plan, what are you going to do with this loan money? How are you going to pay it back? And then appendices are any attachments. So usually that's your personal tax return, maybe your P&L, your profit and loss for your business, those other kinds of things. Small business lending kind of as a whole, big banks like Bank of America are the hardest to receive loans from for small businesses, period. They have lower risk tolerance despite having all the money. They're less likely to lend to local businesses versus national businesses, and they have minimums, and sometimes that's $100,000. And if you're a brand new business, you don't need $100,000. Regional banks are a little better, so like the Umpquas of the world, the Whitman banks. Credit unions are great, and if you have even a personal bank account at a credit union or any established bank account at a credit union, it's easier for them to give you a line of credit without having to go through a bunch of underwriting and saving you time. Small Business Administration has some interesting lending products. Some of those are through credit unions, and some of them are from CDFIs, which are Community Development Fund. I never remember the I, but basically local lenders. They have a bunch of different tools, some of them for operating expenses or payroll, and they can lend between $500,000 and $250,000. So $500,000, you need a laptop. Great, there's an opportunity for that. Locally, Snap Financial, I think everyone thinks of Snap as the place where if you can't pay your Avista bill, they will help you. But they have a separate arm called Snap Financial, and they are an SBA lender and a CDFI. They can lend to all 13 Eastern Washington counties, and they can do a mix of products for you between $500,000 and $150,000. They're about to go to $250,000. The beauty of working with Snap Financial is that they will also help you write your business plan because they have funding for that. So they are a great kind of starting point. Craft 3 is a locally created CDFI, again, a community fund. It is based in Washington, and one of their leaders, Megan Halsey is her name. She helped start up Spokane years ago. She actually lives in Spokane. They loan only to Northwest businesses, period. They have a bunch of lending products, but their minimum is $50,000. So that's a little high barrier for a brand new business, but they have really interesting products. MoFi is another CDFI. Their loans are as small as $1,000, and they will work with you if your business and personal credit is either non-existent or not good. And what MoFi often does, they can help with predatory lending and give you a better loan rate than whatever hard money, credit card, fill in the blank that you might have. And the last one is TED. TED is the Tri-Counties Economic Development District. So that is Stevens, Ferry, and Pend Oreille counties, but they actually loan to all 13 Eastern Washington counties. I do not know the exact source of their funding, but they have a committee and they actually lend to local businesses. And they have a pretty interesting available set of funds there and some kind of different requirements there. So it's true community lending there. So if you're starting out, it's kind of a bottom up. If you're doing really well, it's kind of you're working at the top. But there are opportunities and ways to get funding, and other than just going to US Bank, Bank of America. Operations, quickly. Contracts. As a business owner, you probably have a lot of contracts. You might have sales contracts. You might have vendor contracts. You might have insurance contracts. You might have a lease. All kinds of things. You might have some end user license agreements on your software where you scroll and click. I don't recommend you have to read those every year when you're getting your software because you're going to lose anyway if you're having a fight with Apple or Adobe or fill in the blank. But you should really look at all of your other contracts at least once a year. Set aside time. See if something's being missed. See if you can get a better deal. See if, for example, one thing that happens with if you have a commercial lease for your business space is you have to maintain certain insurance. Make sure you have that insurance rate. Do you have a contract with an accountant or bookkeeper that is going on for a long time and they're not the right fit for you? How do you get out of that contract? Make sure you're looking at those things. And I know it sounds really basic, but truly read your contracts. People can help you look through them. There might be things you're missing. Especially the one that comes up often is leases and missing the right level of commercial insurance. So again, look at your lease every year. Do you have everything you need? Do you have your insurance? Do you have security systems? Do you have X, Y, or Z? Leases are going to want very different things. There are not a lot of protections for tenants in commercial leasing spaces. Residential leases, there's all the protections in the world. Commercial landlords can kind of do whatever they like, and there's not a lot of rights. So definitely read what you've gotten yourself into before you sign it and what you're paying for, because sometimes it's not just your space. Sometimes it's utilities and triple net and fill in the blank. There's a lot.
My triple net just doubled, and they back-charged me for a year.
So your triple net is now 6 times, right?
It's
And back.
$700 instead of $375.
Ooh. So read those documents and talk to someone about it. Doesn't have to be a lawyer. Could be someone who's read a lease before. Could be SIMBA. Could be another nonprofit. Have someone take a look. Think about having insurance for your business, even if you're working by yourself. Liability insurance is pretty straightforward. That is, if someone comes and interacts with your business and is injured, you're not going to have to pay. If they slip and fall at your storefront, if they come to your farmer's market vendor stand and they knock over your table and get injured because of your table, liability insurance is going to take care of that. Also, if you sell a product that people consume and they get sick from it, like food, liability insurance. Property insurance protects your property, so your business space, but also things like your equipment, your computers, your office chairs, your fill in the blank, the things you are working on, your work in progress, your inventory. Property insurance is going to cover that. You may want commercial auto if you're driving a business vehicle. Umbrella coverage is kind of what it sounds like. It picks up the gaps. These all get increasingly expensive. There are some folks we can recommend for better insurance rates. If you have employees, you might want to consider employee practices liability insurance. This protects you as a business owner if your employee sues you for some kind of wrongful termination claim or any other kind of workplace issue. And the beauty of EPLI is that it often provides first dollar defense, meaning they hire you a lawyer right away to address that and usually make things go away, and your insurance premiums have paid for that. And that is an invaluable service because those dollar amounts can get very, very expensive, even if you win. Think about how you're keeping your business records. You can store them electronically. I know everyone says back it up, but truly have a backup system, and use the backup system, because if you lose them and the IRS wants them, or the state of Washington, or fill in the blank, you may have a problem. The Department of Revenue for Washington requires you keep complete and accurate records of all your gross receipts and sales and state deductions for 5 years. So you need to have those for 5 years. Federal taxes you need to keep for a minimum of 3, but 7 is preferred. 7 is preferred because that's how far back the IRS can audit you. That is for both business and personal. And company formation documents, your LLC formation document, your bylaws, your operating agreements, keep those forever. Even if you have an amendment, keep the old one, keep the new one, just in case. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Alexis, who's going to talk about way more fun things that are actually engaging.
Thanks. Yeah, this is way more fun because you're not gonna get in trouble for posting too many selfies or anything like that. So it's way more loose. So yeah, my name's Alexis McLaughlin. I am the newest member of SIMBA, but I won't be for long, so I can't say that anymore. And my background is mainly I went to Eastern actually. I got a communications degree. I mainly focused on social media and website development. I've worked for a lot of local businesses, helping them manage their website and their social media. So I have some tips. This is very social media and website 101. Like Robin said earlier, if you guys need more help, I'm available for free to help you guys with social media, website, anything like that. So I guess we'll start off with, why is social media important for your business? I know it's I hear from feedback from a lot of business owners is that they hate it. They're like, I don't want to deal with it. Why do I have to add one more thing to do onto my already busy schedule, and it's social media. But it's important. It increases brand awareness. It increases web traffic. It's a great way to collaborate with collaboration opportunities, building relationships with other local businesses and customers. It also showcases your expertise, and it's also great for customer service. You can interact with customers. They can message you. It's great. So you want to start with finding your target audience. And your target audience is kind of like a social media term. It's a group of people that your product, services, and marketing efforts are aimed towards, typically defined by traits like age, gender, income, interests, challenges, and goals. I usually say, when you're thinking of your target audience, think of your best customer, the person that you just had a really good interaction with. They always keep coming back. They're always supporting you. That's probably going to be your target audience. Your target audience is not you. So you have to kind of think outside of the box of what your products and services work for people. Something like sometimes on social media, you're like, I don't like it when people post a lot. But there's people who like it when you consistently post. So you kind of have to think outside of the box. Another questions to ask who your target audience is what problem does my product or service solve for this person? What are their demographic characteristics? Like I said earlier, gender, age, income, education, occupation. Also, what are the psychographic characteristics? What are their values? What are their interests, attitudes, lifestyle? That's also important. And where do they typically see new products and services, like magazines, blogs, social media, newspaper? So if your demographic is mainly on social media, you want to be putting in more effort into social media. Let's say if you have an older demographic and they get a lot of their information from newspapers, then you want to be putting more of your marketing efforts into newspapers or printed materials like that. So once you get into social media, you got to pick your platform. Now these ages are just a very broad, like target age. There's lots of different age groups on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, but this is like, if this is your target age group, then you want to be sticking on these platforms. So Instagram, your age range is 18 to 34. Users value aesthetics and strong visual identities. It's a lot of scrolling and you want to see a picture that captures your attention. It's best for visual content, entertainment, and showcasing your products. Facebook, age range is 25 to 54, so it's a little older. It's really, the users on Facebook really value community. So that's why you see a lot of pages, group pages where people can interact. So community is very, very big on Facebook. I think that's kind of what it was in the beginning, how it started. It's really good for event promotion and targeting ads. Same with Instagram because they're owned by Meta. Instagram is great and Facebook is great for target ads. You can really get in there and like pick the location, the demographic, like age category. I usually recommend it for people who, if like you're having like a sale or something like that, you really want to get some people into a storefront or to your website, wherever you're going. It's a great way to target ads. And then there's TikTok, which we don't know how long that's going to be around, so we could maybe this doesn't apply. But it's definitely a younger age range, 18 to 24. Users value entertainment and transparency. It's best for short form content and targeting younger audiences. I usually say, like, if you want to get on TikTok, like, it's a good place to go viral. It's not great for targeting specific locations. It's very like across the board, like a lot of different locations. So when I'm helping businesses, I usually say start off with Instagram, start off with Facebook. TikTok is a little intimidating, but just start off with those and you'll be fine. There's other platforms like Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, and more. LinkedIn is great for if you have a business-to-business business. So if you're trying to like get businesses to work with you. Pinterest is great if you are more of like a retail environment. Pinterest, you do have to post a lot on there, like 8 times a day, just to get it like in people's feeds. And then there's YouTube, like if you are like a visual, like if you're a videographer, visuals, or like make art, that's a great way for YouTube. So once you pick your platform, you want to now make your profile. So who here has a business profile? Just raise your hand. Awesome, cool. So you want your profile to describe your business. You don't want people to like dig for information. You want it to make it very easy. So you definitely want to have your name, your logo, a very quick 1-sentence bio that describes your business, the location, hours, contact information, links. Links is a great way. You just do that like link in bio under all of your posts and people can go to your links and it's there, it's magic. Oh, you have to put it in, but it's magic. And then story highlights. If you do a lot of stories, which I'll talk about stories in a second, you can put your stories up there and people can go back to it and it's a great way for people to learn more about your business. So then you get into content categories. So here are the different types of content that you'll want to be posting. There's connection content. That's like brand stories, employee spotlight, customer testimonials. Those, it's a great way for people to really connect with your business and learn about you and kind of build that trust. People kind of have that story behind your business. Education, so like tutorials and tips. This is when you want to show off your expertise. And I always say you kind of got to give a little free expertise out there. Like when I was running a small like little boutique store, we did interior design services. I would do like videos on like how to style shelves because it is an art form. Like it's definitely an art form. So we would show off how to style a shelf. And people would love that. People were like, oh, wow, this is great. And I'm like, oh, it's super easy. So kind of show off some of your expertise. And then there's the easy ones like holiday posts or trending topics, seasonal tips. There's promotional, so if you have new products or if you have bestsellers, if you have any events going on, this is the time to do it. And then product demonstrations. And then there's entertainment, which can get tricky if you're posting memes, be careful. Quotes, quizzes, polls, show your audience you have a sense of humor, but also this is great for getting that interaction with your audience. I know Robin always posts quizzes and polls. They always do the best, and they're so easy. It's just easy content. Just post a poll, and you can also get feedback from your audience, so it's a win-win. And then there's collaborative. Partner with other brands, cross promotions, support other local businesses. Like if you have a local business that you are friends with or you work with a lot, just kind of use each other's audiences. Also, like if you we would at this interior design, we would always work with realtors, because we had furniture for people who are just moving into new houses. So it kind of worked. You kind of want to find businesses that work with yours. And then there is planning your calendar. This is the fun part. Well, not really, but I'm actually currently doing this. We have been posting events like crazy lately. So we have tons of content right now because we have so many events coming up. But this is what I like to do at the beginning of the month, because it's just, I'm very visual and I have to have everything kind of lay out in front of me. So I'll get a calendar and I will start with holidays. Those are easy. So I'll put the holidays in, and then any promotions, so any sales. For May we had a Mother's Day sale, a Memorial Day sale. And then any seasonal things going on. First day of spring or summer, stuff like that. And then the posting day. So what I usually recommend is you should be posting probably 3 times a week. That's a minimum. Anything more than that might be a little too much. Anything less, you're not posting really consistently. So yeah, I usually say 3 times a week. So I would pick my posting days. I always liked Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I don't know, it's just easy. You can do whatever you guys want, but to me, it was just really easy. And then I start mapping out some of the content. So then that's when I start filling in the different types of content I have. So, and I'll sprinkle them in, I don't want to do all my connection at the beginning of the month, or, I want to spread it out. So on that first Wednesday, let's do a meet the team post. And if you have a big team, you can spread it out, do one once a month, which is really nice. But meet the team, and then you want to get one of those educational content. And also, I usually say, do different forms of content, like reels. Those are really popular right now on Instagram. So if you did 1 reel a week, that's really good. Sometimes I barely can get 1 reel a month, but it's just gotta get that goal and I'll get there eventually. And then there's just a whole bunch of different things. So testimonials, I always see those on social media pages. Funny quotes. If you have a giveaway, you could do a giveaway. If you do any sales, you could do sales. So just kind of fill in that content, and that's going to be really nice when you have it already pre-planned, instead of just oh, I guess I'll post today, or just have it planned out, and then it takes out all that effort, I feel like. Also, another thing that I like using a lot is Canva. I love Canva. And I know if you're a graphic designer, that's really bad, but I love Canva. Canva actually has a calendar on there, so you can map out your whole calendar on there. It is a little bit extra for a subscription, but it's great. You can make all of your own content on there. Go ahead.
Can you tell us what Canva is?
Oh, sorry. Yes, Canva is. I don't know how to even describe it. It's just software. Yeah, it's like a software, an app where you can just create just any kind of media. You can create videos on there. You can create just a flyer. If you wanted to create a handout, you could create a PowerPoint. I use some Canva for this PowerPoint. Yeah, you can create a lot of stuff on there, which is really nice. What I use it for is social media. And the nice thing about it is that it'll give you templates, so it looks really cool, and you just plug in your information, and you can tweak it a little bit too. Another thing about Canva that I like a lot is that you can just have all of your branding in there, so it's already ready to go. Like, let's say you have a logo, it's already in there. It has all of your brand colors, so you have kind of keep your branding consistently on Canva. Also, like if you just use a font, if you have fonts that you like to use, they're all in there. So it's really nice. I definitely recommend it. The free version is still really cool, so I would recommend it. So afterwards, after you do all your posts, you want to be engaged on social media. That's how the internet, I don't know, like the internet figures out algorithms and all the meta data is getting engaged. So one way is to reply to comments. So be sure you're liking or responding to all the comments on your posts, even if it's like a little, like a heart emoji or just like a thanks, something like that, always respond. You also want to scroll your feed. So interact with your main feed by liking and commenting other accounts. That's really good. Stories and Reels. I was talking about Reels a little earlier. Reels have a greater potential to be discovered by the more like Instagram community. They kind of copied TikTok, and so Instagram really wanted to push their own version of TikTok, so they definitely push Reels a little further than other posts. And then there's Stories, which is a copy from Snapchat. Everything is all stolen from everything. So Stories are a really good way to just keep your brand on top of everyone's mind. So like we will share something that just kind of works with our brand. Like we like to share like local events going on for local businesses, like Spokane events, just stuff like that. And we're always going to be on top of that little story highlight. And that's just a great way of just sharing, and like if you don't feel like posting, post something to your story on that day. Also using hashtags. You want to create your own hashtag. We have our own hashtag, which is like Spokane Independent and SIMBA. SIMBA Spokane, yes, sorry. Yeah, you want to also research other hashtags that are being used on like accounts. That's really important. And then do your research. Follow and like local businesses that your guys' audience would overlap. I usually say like find like 3 or 5 accounts that you really like admire their posts, their content, and just kind of like keep track of them, do a little stalking, just be like, oh, that's a really good idea. Get inspiration from other people. It's really useful. Also, you want to be interacting with other local businesses too, consistently. So website. This is fun. Does anyone here have a business website? Yes, okay, awesome.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You said you have your own hashtag. How do you get that?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good question. You kind of want to play around with your hashtag that isn't being used already. So what's the name of your... Gusto. So I would play around with that. Sorry, the question is, how do you create your own hashtag? So I would maybe play around with like adding your name and then maybe the location you're at, and just keep looking it up and seeing if it's being used widely. That's probably the best way to do it.
But how do you create it?
Oh, you just start using it.
You just start using
Hashtag. Yep, just start using it. Yep, and then it'll just start. No filing. See, that's what I'm saying. Social media is easier.
No compliance.
Yes, no compliance. You just start using it. Just start using hashtag, then your hashtag. But before, I would recommend like searching it in like a search bar and just search some hashtags and see if it's already being used. And then you can kind of customize it more, like adding different, like your location or maybe like the specific area that you were in, you know? So yeah, I can always help you out too if you need help with that. Okay, so website. Why does a website matter to your business? A website ensures constant accessibility to potential customers, it establishes credibility and expands the reach to a wider audience, and acts as a platform to showcase products and services. This is a great way to just have everything out there on your business, and a great way for people to contact you, to see your past projects, the work you do. You can do this yourself. You do not have to have a professional do it anymore, which is really nice. Some of the platforms that I'm familiar with is Shopify and Squarespace. Shopify is great if you are more of an e-commerce, which means that you're adding to cart, you're shipping, doing all of that. Squarespace is great if you just want something to showcase your business. And then there's Wix. The only one I would not recommend is WordPress. It is not fun to use. It looks like you know what I'm talking. Yes, you agree, right? That's the only one I would not recommend. It's not very user-friendly. Squarespace is super user-friendly. We are actually switching over our website from WordPress to Squarespace, and it's going to look very beautiful. I was actually helping someone the other day set it up, and it's so easy, way easier to use. You can kind of line it up. It has a grid. You can edit it very easily. You have all of your colors, your branding all in one area, and they create templates too. So you can make it look really nice without paying someone a lot of money. So I definitely recommend using it. Most of them also register a domain. You do want to get a domain, and a lot of them have good deals. So like if for the first 2 years your domain is free, and then it's like $12 a month. And then Squarespace is, depending on which level you get, probably starting is $35 a month. So on your website, you want to have craft a very clear and concise website, a well-designed website with a clean layout, intuitive navigation, branding, and clear messaging enhances users' experience. Again, don't make users work to find information. They don't like that. Identify the needs and interests of your target audience and tailor your content to address them. So when you create content on your navigation up on the very top, that is where you'll have like the home, about us, products, services. You want to make those all clear and concise. And then you could also add some other things, like if you wanted to add a blog, you could add that up there, or past or events, like if your business has had events, you could have an event area. So those are just some examples. Visuals are important. Be sure to have high quality images and videos. Use a consistent tone that reflects your brand's personality. So you want like your wording to be very consistent. Like if you have more of like a fun, humorous side, make it a little more fun. If you're more of like a very strict, very professional vibe, make it very professional. And then also keep consistent branding. So this is what I was talking about earlier with Canva. So use like designated colors, fonts, logos, and images throughout your content. And lastly, update your website with fresh and relevant content, such as blogs, articles, events, promotions. And basically, you want to keep the visitors coming back to your website. If you are not ready for a website, you can join Live Local. Live Local is a directory and marketplace for locally owned businesses in Eastern Washington. Robin was talking about it earlier. You guys can sign up using this up at the table. It's really great. I like it. Does anyone have any questions for Robin and I? And I guess we'll give you guys the mic too, so you guys can talk in the mic.
Or no questions.
Or no
You've asked
questions.
a lot of questions already.
I'll be talking to you next week anyway.
Yes. That's why I was like, we'll just talk.
Yeah, I was saying, like you said, we do trainings on different topics, different varieties. We have, if you're interested in food trucks, which I think no one in this room is, but if you were interested in food trucks, we're doing a food truck event with Elle and I on the 28th. This weekend, we're doing an event for temporary business licenses. These are people who sell like one time a year with Manzanita House. So for example, a lot of the immigrants who work with Manzanita House, it's another nonprofit, they sell at World Refugee Day every year, like their home crafts or their cookies or whatever. You need a license for that. So that is that. The Spokane Film Project is having us out to talk about what to be or not to be an LLC. Our social media is where we share those events and let you know what's happening. We do have a gig worker event coming up on June 1st. It'll be part mingling and networking and part learning. Gig worker is anyone who is not full-time employed. So if you have a side gig, if you are an Uber driver, if you're a performer, if you're a fill in the blank, more information there. We have really good catering coming to that one. But we post those on social media. I know I personally often during this presentation have raised my hand and talk about how much I hate Facebook and that I only have Facebook for this job. And my friends on Facebook are these SIMBA employees and no other content. So don't take it personally if you try to friend me on there and I just let it die. But we share the information out there in our newsletters as well. There's always an event tab. Like I said, you can skip to that. And we are growing our team right now to provide more. There's 2 of us here. There's 2 part-timers. We have some contractors that work with us. We're going to add another full-time employee who can provide this kind of assistance and more, all kinds of other things at no cost to you. Thank you very much for spending your time with us. Take home food. Those do freeze nicely is my understanding, the shawarma. And then let us know what you need. There's tons of handouts on the back counter. We didn't mention we're an L&I contractor, so you can talk to us about L&I related topics without having to get a fine from L&I because we have no reporting requirements, which is lovely. So everything from wage and hour law to contractor licensing to how do I fill out my workers' compensation report. We are planning for the summer a workplace safety plan. This is something I knew they existed, but I didn't know every business in Washington, even if you work by yourself, for yourself, in your home, has to have a written workplace safety plan, which is wild. It's only gonna come up if there's an accident, but just in case. So we have someone from L&I coming to do a workshop to let you actually leave with a workplace safety plan in place. So Alexis runs our social media, which is good because I am not good at it. So everything is always on there. Events that are upcoming are always pinned to the top of Instagram. And thank you so much for your time tonight.